Hello, everyone, and welcome to RBCM at Home. My name is Kim Goff, and I'm a learning program developer at the Royal BC Museum. I'm coming to you from my home, which is located in Victoria, British Columbia, which is located on the territories of the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations, the Lekwungen-speaking people. RBCM at Home started in March when our museum and archive closed due to the pandemic. It was an opportunity to talk to staff about what they were working on from home. Now that some of us are back at work and back at the museum, this is an opportunity to continue to talk to folks from the museum and to reach out to those of you at home or at school around BC. Today I have three guests here to talk about the Royal BC Museum's COVID-19 Collecting for Our Time project. My colleague, Chris O'Connor, may be familiar to many of you as a learning program developer and host of RBCM at Home Kids, and sometimes host of this program too. Chris has been part of the working group developed to facilitate the influx of emails and to cultivate relationships and stories around BC's COVID-19 experiences. Our second guest is a public contributor to the project, Jocelyn Munch, a reading recovery teacher who works with vulnerable children in grade 1. And our third guest is artist Lisa Maas, who embarked on a marathon art project during the pandemic. We'll hear more about both of their experiences soon. Chris, before we jump into the project, maybe let's start at the very beginning. Tell us a little bit about your overall role at the museum and how you got started in museum education.
Oh, I thought you were going to say like when I grew up and when I was born. And no, I was an artist as well. I was a dancer and choreographer, and then I also, from doing that work, actually worked in schools, doing arts education and integrating creative movement into the classroom for K to 12. And it was out of doing that work that I was interested in expanding that kind of work in a kind of informal learning environment. So I started working at the Vancouver Art Gallery, and then out of that work, started working at the Royal BC Museum. So I'm a museum educator with a like non-traditional sort of path to becoming a museum educator.
And a sense of curiosity and interest and so many other great qualities for sure.
Yeah.
So Chris, let's maybe focus, we'll jump ahead because there's so many different things you do at the museum. And one of them is we get called to be on special committees and projects. And back in March, when COVID sent so many people home and it became obvious this was a significant historical event. This was something future generations would be interested about. A project was started at the Royal BC Museum called COVID Collecting for Our Time. Chris, do you want to talk a little bit more about that project?
Yeah, and it's a shifting perspective within museums as well. Often we think of museums as and we define the past as something like 50 years ago, 100 years ago. The past is now. It's happening all around us, and so there is real desire of many museums, but especially during this time, to reflect on what's happening around us. How do we make sense of it now, and how do we collect? That might be things, that might be tangible objects, but it might be stories, it might be images, it might just be reflections. How does that act of collecting, how do we do that responsibly? How do we do that within community rather than at community? And how do we do that in a way that in 50, 100 years from now, it will make sense, or it will have some sort of resonance of multiple perspectives? So this was a perfect example, but even prior to that, we started to think about how to reflect on the global, climate change action happening around the world, and like whether that's protest signs or people's experiences of action, collective action. So we're starting to think about how to do that and how to do that well. But definitely the COVID-19 pandemic period was a time to really like go in deeper about that. So we put out a call to the entire province to have people think about like how are they reflecting, or how are they making sense of this time, be it through art or writing or photographs. And we received over 200 submissions from all over the province, a whole diversity of different ways of thinking about it as people were in it. And that has been really interesting and really generous of people to take the time to think about that and share that with the museum and the broader community. So.
And you have some highlights of those collections. As you said, there's over 200 different.
Yeah, so I won't show all 200. But also what happened is, and so I'll just share my screen. So what we found as we had submissions is that there were certain themes that came out, and one of the themes was this, especially in the spring, it's school kind of. So after spring break, and then when classes didn't come back after spring break, and people were doing learning from home, it was a big adjustment for educators and teachers. And then in June, there was the option for kids to come back to school in a limited way. So this is a class. Jossie is the person who submitted this, and she's in the middle in the striped shirt with an EA, an educational assistant in her class, and a student. So she's gotten permission from everyone here to share this image. This student was the only student that came back in June, and this is in Delta. So for 2 weeks, there was just one student in the classroom, and then Jossie was supporting the learning of students at home. After 2 weeks, another student came, so there were 2 students. So it's a very different way of thinking about school as an educator and as an EA. So she submitted this photo, and a similar kind of photo. This is from Tina here in Victoria, and this is also with permission from the family. This is a child who's a child of an essential worker. So this is early on in the pandemic, and the child was coming to childcare at this school, and this was the first day that he arrived. So it really speaks to like things have radically shifted, both for adults and for kids, and maybe particularly for kids. And then one more, this is Allison from North Vancouver and her son, Charlie, and also early on, you see May 8th, 2020. He's just trying to make sense of what's going on by having the 6 feet apart and the face mask and also banging pots at 7 o'clock. So she wanted to share his journal, basically. So another thing was around separation. So this is Nancy, who submitted this, and her daughter is in a care home. And so she couldn't visit her daughter in person, so they would visit through the window of the care home. And Nancy said every time that she came, there would be a new message on the window that was just written on the window. So she wanted to share that. There's a lot of images and reflections around separation and how people were making sense of separation. Also milestones too. So this is a wedding early on during the pandemic. You'll notice the beer is Corona in the background. And they actually gave out, this is Sarah and her wedding. They gave out toilet paper as gifts to people when they came to the wedding. So trying to do the best they can to have a wedding during the pandemic. Another sort of a theme was around empty towns. So this is Campbell River. Jessica did a whole series of images in Campbell River. This is Michael, who's a bus driver in Victoria. And he sent this, and it was just strange for him to be a bus driver in Victoria and not have anyone on the bus. But he still kept doing his rounds. And then Colin is a photographer who took a lot of photographs in Victoria. So we had lots of multiple submissions from people from their experience over weeks and months. Another theme was around essential workers, people taking photographs or meeting and talking with essential workers and just valuing the incredible work that they were doing during that period and during this period too. It's not over. So this is Jason, who did a series of photographs of, and this is in New Westminster. And this is Deanna from Kamloops, and she runs a food truck, and she really wanted to support the truckers that were coming through Kamloops, especially early on in the pandemic. So she sent some photographs of what they were doing in Kamloops to support the truckers during the pandemic. And then the last one that I wanted to share is just quarantining in style. So there's lots of people submitting portraits of how they're making the best of it. And this is Freddie, and Freddie's housemaid is a hairdresser. So luckily Freddie was able to still have a very stylish haircut during the pandemic. And then Jocelyn presented or sent this photo of her, and I'll let Jocelyn take it from here.
Oh, thank you, Chris. It's just really interesting to see all the different photos that have been submitted and how you're choosing to capture those different aspects of the pandemic. I think it's really great. This is a picture of me and my daughter, Ava. She's 4.5 years old. And I'm teaching one of my students online. So part of the reading recovery lesson is that the student comes up with a little story that they want to write. And so together, teacher and student, we will write that story together. And it's an opportunity for them to begin to learn new words and to find that cutting edge of their learning to grasp onto something that's meaningful to them in their writing. So surprisingly to me, it actually worked out fairly well to be teaching the kids online, although it's not as a powerful learning tool as having a student right there in person. But it was just so nice for me to be able to connect with my students online, because they do mean so much to me. In the normal classroom setting, I will see those students every day for 30 minutes. So you can imagine over the span of a year how close we become. And so Ava wasn't in daycare, and she was running around in all different respects. And this morning she just wanted to be part of the lesson with me and was interested in meeting my students online.
And I imagine that's kind of a part of the experience and making this new relationship with your students online, is having them as part of having them in your home, because it looks like you're maybe set up in your living room here. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your office setup?
Yeah, so this is our dining room table. And yeah, so the students did get to see a little bit more of, where I lived, and they met my daughter, and yeah, it kind of created this other dimension of understanding who I was outside of the classroom. So the first time that they saw me, they were, a bit of a sensory overload, because they're trying to see this person who's their teacher normally with a background like this in a whole other setting. So it was a neat experience for sure.
What were some of your biggest challenges?
Well, for sure, trying to divide my attention between trying to be a parent and trying to be a teacher. My kids, like my students, I call them my kids sometimes, being in grade 1, they still need a lot of one-on-one attention, a lot of one-on-one support. There's not a lot of room for independent learning. So my attention is usually like 100% on them, but at the same time, my 4.5-year-old, she's not going to understand that. And so it was really challenging for my husband and I to be able to manage her and also try to meet the responsibilities of our employers and our employment in that type of situation. So I'd say that was my number one challenge.
Chris, can I get you to stop sharing for just 1 second? I'm wondering, Jocelyn, because now we see that you are back in a classroom setting. are you back in the classroom full time? Are you also doing some online learning now as well?
No, it's we're doing face-to-face instruction. There's no online learning that I'm a part of right now. In September, we do a lot of what they're called observation surveys, where I begin to find the students that I'm going to take for this year. So yeah, none of my learning is online at this time.
And is there though something that maybe that you learned from your experience of having to teach online and being at home that's maybe making your practice a little different now, or maybe makes you appreciate something differently now?
Well, I certainly do appreciate the three-dimensional interactions that I get from seeing people. I think, I mean, I think maybe some people, and maybe myself too, underestimated how much I feel like I need that social connection that's face-to-face with people. At the same time, I guess the positive of it is I learned how to teach online. So for me, that was, you know, professional development on the spot. Learned how to use a lot of different types of technology that I may not have necessarily used in my normal practice. And it also allowed me to collaborate with a lot of different people. I'm part of a reading recovery Facebook group with reading recovery teachers all over the world. And so being online, it gave me the opportunity to be able to collaborate with some of these teachers on a more regular basis and learn about how they're doing things. I think also normally if I was to have a reading recovery meeting with teachers in my district, we would always be doing it in person, but it did give us the opportunity to collaborate online anywhere, anytime. So it created an added layer of flexibility in our schedules to be able to talk to each other.
That's a real bonus. I think, you know, we get so, speaking for myself at work, yeah, I kind of got into my zone and my place and the people that I could see and connect with. And then having to move to doing more things online, it did expand not only the audience, but it expanded my group of colleagues because now I'm talking with museums around BC and with people doing similar things and taking webinars and seminars and gaining so much practice. So it's been a bright side for me as well. Well, thank you, Jocelyn. Thanks for sharing that experience. I thought it was just so interesting to have that perspective of a teacher and a parent and working from home and doing that kind of balance. It must have been quite a feat of time management.
There was a lot of deep breathing. I'm hoping that the worst is over. And I think my daughter too, she started to learn a lot more about herself and started to grow in confidence and her independence. So I was really happy to see that growth in her too.
It seemed like that image in particular really captured that dynamic. And it's, like it just looked like she was so comfortable and you were so comfortable. And I know it's more complicated than that, but the image really captured, I think, what a lot of parents are really struggling with and do still struggle with is that, but especially early pandemic of being at home and doing work and also still being a parent and not being able to like always find a good balance or an easy balance with that. So.
Yeah, it was very challenging because our children are not used to being in their mommy or daddy's office at work. It's not bring your kid to work day every day. Yeah. And they just don't understand that their mommy or daddy needs to be doing their job. And they're so used to having 100% of us, or at least a big proportion of us, all the time to meet their needs. So they're just not at that level, at least my daughter at 4.5 isn't, to understand that mommy's doing her job right now and you need to go and do something else, you know?
Yeah. I was going to make a joke about working next door to Chris in the office, but I'm going to let that slide. Chris, do you want to put up the next picture? And this one is a submission from Lisa. who's joined us as well today. So Lisa, can you tell us a little bit about this image and the bigger project that it was part of?
Yeah, hi. This image, I mean, the project I did started out, I was laid off from my work, and I didn't have any sense of purpose or feeling like I was contributing to anything. And I had been not doing art since probably the last October, when I participated in Inktober. So it was an opportunity for me to jump back in, because that's usually when I feel the best is when I'm doing art. So I thought, well, maybe I could contribute this way to myself and to other people. It was an image a day, and the idea was to do something fairly positive and not super in your face, but at the same time, I didn't want to make it sound like it was easy or I was perfect, because I'm certainly not. So this image in particular, it just acknowledges the fact that, like, there is a lot going on, and there's a lot that kind of builds up inside you and inside other people, and they're not really sure why they aren't doing so well. Some of us who weren't working but still felt like really tired and like not sure why they're not reorganizing their house or baking up a storm. And this picture sort of captured that for me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great image. There are so many words that people might resonate with: isolation, loneliness, worry, sadness, anxiety, loss, fear. There's a lot of scary emotions there. Big emotions. I won't say scary. They're real emotions, and they're big ones that we have to face. How many days did your project last, Lisa?
I just counted this morning because I couldn't remember, but I did it for 65 days in a row.
Wow.
Which, they're not super complicated pictures. However, it does take a while every day I had to come up with one, so there's that pressure of deadline.
So where did you find your inspiration?
Well, I guess like many people, one way I kept myself sane and grounded was walking around my neighborhood. And walking is often something I do in order to come up with ideas in other creative endeavors I do. So that was a good fit. And early on, it seemed like there was a lot of inspiration all around from friends, from family, from things I was seeing online. So the ideas were just sort of dropped into my lap, and they came easily. For instance, like my niece, her two kids were participating in the 7 o'clock serenade of healthcare workers, and she posted a video on her Instagram, so I took that page out of there. Everybody was baking at the time. There's an image about baking. Walking around the neighborhood, I saw driveway chalk art, so that was one of the images. It turns out, didn't even realize it at the time, but I knew that person who lived there. So that was kind of cool to realize that later. So yeah, walking and talking and listening to people, that was how I got my inspiration for everything. And also all those, the darker feelings or the harder feelings that were coming up in me out of fear and isolation and yeah, things that probably a lot of people were feeling at the time.
How did you share your images, Lisa? How did you find an audience for them?
I just shared mine through social media, through Instagram and a Facebook page for art that I have. Yeah, it was really great. Like, I don't have a super ton of followers, but they are people often that I know. And it was really nice to keep in touch with people that way. And I got comments day to day, which really would lift me up. And I'm hoping that even if it was just for a couple of minutes, I would brighten somebody's day, because I'm not an essential worker, and those people are doing important work, and it's nice to feel like you're contributing in some way, even if it's tiny. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your point about getting some feedback, having somebody say they like the image and so forth. I think that's a really key part too. Like even just for us walking around our neighborhood, just saying hi to people and smiling and or having a quick short chat with somebody you hadn't met before. It was just part of making you feel better and not so alone and everything. So Lisa,
And
people
I'm
do
just
want to.
gonna, sorry, I'm just going to, I just added a couple slides to the slideshow.
Oh,
So
these are
this,
people.
yeah, so this is another one that Lisa submitted, and then this one as well.
Yeah, that one is going out walking with other people, and how, that was actually kind of stressful in the beginning, trying to keep 6 feet apart and avoiding other people. Yeah, that was a walk along the Songhees.
I was going to ask, that was the Songhees Waterway, the mountains there.
Yeah.
So Lisa, if people wanted to see more of your art, if you're comfortable sharing an Instagram or a social media page, you're welcome to say it out loud, or if you want to type it into the chat window, people can pick it up from there.
I can say it out loud. It's my name, Lisa Moss, art on the end of that, so all one word. The spelling of my last name is a little bit weird, so it's right in the screen there, 2 A's, M-A-A-S. Yeah, and lately I've been walking around doing some quick outdoor watercolor sketches, and I post those as well. So I feel like this project sort of helped me springboard into more creativity, so that was a good thing.
And I think, Lisa, just knowing your work as well, that I just think about how early on in the pandemic, we talked earlier about walking the neighborhood more and sort of feeling a sense of place even more. And the project that you're doing now, where you're drawing, say, a building, and then you hold that up in front of the building, is really quite beautiful. And I think there's a connective thread there about understanding place better and taking the time to really look.
Yeah, it's actually changed the way I walk. Like I walk with purpose now to try to seek out new places. So that's been really great, new component of this COVID. Yeah.
So Lori Roche, who's watching here on Zoom, in response to the first image Chris shared of yours, says, just a very, very powerful image. She resonates with that.
Thanks.
Now, there's a question here in the Q&A, and it's a big one. So this is open to all panelists in the room here. You said this message is from Matthew and Michelle. And it reminds us of the need for scale to balance all the needs of working online, supporting a family, meeting everyone's needs, including our own. Is there a way to balance it all?
You first.
I don't think there is. I don't know. I think you have to just keep trying different things. And there actually is a comment here in the chat window that kind of relates. I think it does relate in a way, from Marnie, who said, just finding a way to make the day special was important. Like having a birthday party in the parking lot. That was something that they did to just make the day a little different and make occasions special, however we can. For us, we tried to make our days different. Like we would say, well, Wednesday is going to be an art day. Just Thursday, we're going to watch a totally new program we've never watched before. We'll just try something new. Friday will be a pizza night. We just tried to make different nights different so that there was a purpose and something to look forward to that was a little different each time.
I could say something maybe a little bit about that. I think that the balance that we have in our lives really stems from our emotional well-being. And what we could tolerate on one day, we might not be able to tolerate that same type of balance on another day. And I think that we need to be flexible and just be able to take time to recognize, when we are feeling stressed and when we need a little bit more of our me time, just to calm down the nerves. Because when I live my own life, I think I have like a certain window of tolerance in my day to fill in all of the things that I'm supposed to get done. But if I wake up and I'm not feeling well, that what I can tolerate in a day is much less than it might be on a normal day. Or, you know, if something happens, like get into an accident or an argument with somebody, you know, what I can get done in my day is just not going to be the same as what I would on a normal day. And I think like I try in my life to be mindful of that and know, okay, I've had a hard day. I need to just pump the brakes on ABC and leave that for another day and take a little bit of time to myself. And that might mean, you know, have a cup of coffee or tea, or just relax on the couch and just forget about it. If my daughter is going to watch a little bit extra TV today than she normally does. And I don't think it's a perfect art either. You're going to make mistakes. Some days are going to be good and some days aren't.
Mhm.
I think for me, I might be in a different situation than you, Jocelyn. Oh, I know I am. My big challenge is staying connected to people and feeling very isolated. And it's usually when you feel the most isolated that it's the hardest to reach out. So for me, that's the challenge, is to keep doing that when if those dark days come, is to reach out to people and try to set up, you know, socially distant outdoor activities or FaceTime or Skype calls, things like that. So that's how I try to keep my mental, my spirits up.
So important. Chris, I'm going to add a little twist before your response.
Oh.
Michelle and Matthew were thinking a little bit also, how do you represent this in a museum exhibit? So thinking of how do you tell this story from a museum point of view? How would you represent that, finding this balance?
Within a museum exhibition?
Mm.
Yeah, well, I think museums at their best are spaces for people to express and share and learn and grow together, individually and collectively. So I, it almost seems like Matthew and Michelle were talking about some sort of like physical thing where people can acknowledge what they need and in terms of sustaining their own self. So whether that's flexibility and like picking something up and putting it on a scale so that they're actually like
I was also
identify.
thinking of a teeter-totter
Yeah.
as an interactive of some sort, where there's different things weighing down one side, and how do you find a balance there?
Yeah, like what do you need to pick up and honor and like give space to and really give attention to help that balance out. And I was thinking personally for myself there, I often as a parent also like thinking about the the loss of this time of within my kids' learning journey, but also like gratitude for other things that are surfacing up by not having the same kind of pressures that sometimes can be really anxiety producing in a traditional sort of school schedule. So being able to just sort of like have perspective to pull back sometimes and say what looks like loss might actually be more involved, and like there might be some growth that comes from it that I might not be able to see in the moment. So yeah.
Well, thank you, everyone, and thanks for the good chat on that as well in the chat room here. Comments from, you know, you do whatever it takes to do, or you might need to change. Things will change from day to day. You think you've got to figure it out, but you're going to need something different tomorrow or the day after. And being able to have some way to share these responses through the project is part of sharing that and reaching out and connecting and maybe finding another community. So thank you both, Jocelyn and Lisa, for doing that and for making a submission to that website and for sharing your story. If oh yes, our pleasure. Well, that brings us to the end of this.
Can I just say, Kim, though, that it was such a pleasure to be on the receiving end of those submissions, because I was the main point person when emails came in, and just to see all the different responses. So if people do want to send things in, we're still accepting submissions. I don't know if you were about to mention that, Kim.
Mhm, I will. Yeah, I will. And yeah, and I'm glad it was you, Chris, because I'm a real weeper. I was even crying when you were just showing the highlights, and I've seen them before. So if I had to read all of those submissions, I might need more support in my job. So again, thank you all, and thanks for joining us. If you joined us late or you missed something and you want to go back, this has been recorded, and you will find it on the Royal BC Museum's YouTube channel. So please have a look there. Our museum has reopened, and we are ready to welcome you back. So Jocelyn, when you and your daughter do come to Victoria, you can find out more about time tickets and visiting on our website.
Thank you.
We will be
Say hi to-
continuing, you will be continuing at home kids, and at outside for the foreseeable future. And those links for all these programs are again on the Royal BC Museum website. And as you've heard, we are collecting perspectives, photos, videos, and ideas that will help tell the story of this moment for future generations. Right now, we're focusing on information and experiences, and you can make a contribution by visiting our online submission form to tell us what you think should be captured for the future. Next week, I'm going to be chatting with Royal BC Museum's paleontology intern, Alexis Bazinet, who has been researching fossil feather anatomy found in our collection. So please join us. And until then, continue to take care of yourselves and take care of one another.